Richard Nixon, the 37th president.
People have got to know if their president's a crook. Well, I am not a crook. These are the words that President Nixon spoke in 1973 when he was addressing the nation in the wake of allegations that he had violated his oath of office during the Watergate scandal. And while Watergate is the thing that we know most about Nixon, it's the thing that he's most remembered for, and probably rightfully so, that overlooks a lot of the big accomplishments of the Nixon administration and a lot of the really consequential events that happened in American history during his administration. Nixon was first elected in 1968, running against Hubert Humphrey. He positioned himself as a candidate of stability. While the Democratic Party was kind of engaging in a lot of infighting over the direction that the party wanted to go in, Nixon positioned himself as the voice of calm, the voice of reason, and he was elected overwhelmingly over Hubert Humphrey. During the Nixon administration, several really consequential things happened. First of all, Richard Nixon followed through on the promise of John F. Kennedy to see a man land on the moon, and in 1969, we saw American astronauts land on the moon. Nixon actually prepared two different speeches, one for success and one if the mission ended in failure. Fortunately for all of us, he got to give the success speech, and Americans still to this day remain tremendously proud of that accomplishment. One of the things that I think people don't really know about Nixon is that Nixon is largely responsible for a lot of the landmark, groundbreaking environmental legislation that we have in this country today. Nixon was the founder of the Environmental Protection Agency. He signed into law the Clean Air Act. He actually vetoed the Clean Water Act, but only because he didn't like the way that it got at its goals and not the actual intent of the legislation. Nixon was an early adopter of the environmental movement, which I don't think a lot of people know about him. But most of Nixon's accomplishments as president are in the realm of foreign policy. Nixon was the first American president to visit China after the takeover by the Communist Party. Up until that point in time, the United States had recognized the government in Taiwan, sort of the government in exile, as the legitimate government of China. Richard Nixon was the first American president to do away with that and say, look, this is just not realistic. The government that's actually in Beijing is the government that controls mainland China, and we need to do business with them because we can't just keep ignoring them and pretending like they don't have any legitimacy. And so Nixon himself visited China. He met with Premier Zhou Enlai and the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, Mao Zedong. And he also toured a lot of China, and he took camera crews with him, and that gave Americans, a lot of Americans, their first glimpse into what life in China was actually like. So this was a really important moment in world history and American history, as it exemplified Nixon's commitment to a more open world. Nixon also presided over really profound and impactful talks with the Soviet Union that led to the SALT Accords and then the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, both of which were instrumental in de-escalating the conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union, kind of reducing a lot of the tension that existed between those two countries during the Cold War. We also saw the end of the Vietnam War during the Nixon administration. At first, Nixon had tried to escalate the Vietnam conflict, but once he kind of realized that this was just not going to work, he began talks with Ho Chi Minh for a settled withdrawal and a gradual withdrawal of American forces that culminated in the end of the Vietnam War and the withdrawal of all American forces from Vietnam. It also culminated in the end of the draft, which was tremendously unpopular. Nixon's presidency unfortunately ended with the Watergate scandal and his resignation from office, making him the only president in American history to resign his office. But only focusing on that and not on the other accomplishments of Nixon's presidency kind of misses some really important stuff. So, thanks.